Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to deal with patients who fail to keep an appointment and have missed a test. I'm logged into Dawn already and I'm looking at the work list panel and I can see number of patients with missed test. Now it's really important in Dawn that you don't lose track of patients, so we must chase up on these. So I click on the link to missed tests and this takes me into the list of patients. I can see they're divided into two categories: priority, schedule manually before running a bulk reschedule, and late, okay to bulk reschedule. So just to explain a little bit about it, Dawn can automatically reschedule patients' next appointments if they fail to come, but sometimes you might need to look at a patient and check whether it's safe to just do that automatically. So looking at the priority reasons, these are things like the patient's on interacting drugs, there's been a trend in their INR, they didn't have a dose last time, they had a miss or boost dose last time, they were showing a trend in their INR, or they're high risk class. So to look at one of these patients, what I do is I click on the patient in the list. In the patient screen, I can see that the patient was due to come for an appointment. They've not had any INRs done in the past, so it's really important that we keep track of this patient and follow up on them. To do that, I can mark the patient as non-attending by pressing the DNA button. It's asking me to check the recommended next appointment date, and it's suggested they come back in a week from yesterday. I can bring this date forward if I want to, or I can leave it as it is and click again on DNA. And what you can see is that in the background I've got non-attendance letters generating, and because this is the first time the patient has failed to keep an appointment, it's sending out a non-attendance letter number 1. I can say OK to that message and I can go back to the list view. This takes me back to the list view and I can see that that patient has now dropped out of the list. What I can also point out is that there's a DNA count showing on this list view. So anybody with a 0 has not failed to keep this appointment before. This patient has got a DNA count of 1, this one 2 and 3. So let's look a little bit more closely at that. I'm going to go into this patient here. And I can already see that she's failed to keep this appointment one time before. I can also see she's taking interacting drugs, and I might want to go and have a look at that and see whether that's going to influence my decision about how and when I see her again. Assuming I'm just going to follow the process, I'm going to click on the DNA button, say OK to the message, check the date. If I'm happy with the date, click on the DNA button again. And this time we can see, because it's the patient's second time failing to keep this appointment, that she's getting a non-attendance letter number 2. So I can say OK to this message and I can go back to the list view. And again, that's patient's dropped out of the list. We'll look at this patient who's got a DNA count of 2. We'll run through exactly the same process. See whether I agree with the appointment, change it if I want to, if not, click DNA. So this time it's generated on a non-attendance letter number 3. So each of the letters will have slightly stronger wording encouraging the patient to come and get their bloods checked. And some sites at this point would also generate a letter to the patient's general practitioner to tell them that they're failing to keep appointments. I'm going to go back to the list view and deal with the patient who's already failed to keep this appointment 3 times. Again, I can make a decision about this. I can click on the DNA. And this time we can see something different has happened. It sent out a discharge letter due to non-attendance. And I say OK to this message. And it's telling me that the treatment plan has been set to non-attending. Now this is a specific status for the treatment plan, and the patient will stay with this status until I either reactivate them because they've got back in touch and they've come back for an appointment, or I decide to discharge them from the service. So I'm just going to go back to the list view. So the patient I just dealt with was put in a status of non-attending. And I've said how important it is to not lose track of these patients. So what we have is we have another filter on here that says, give me my persistent non-attenders, and I can find a list of those. If I want to see who I've DNA'd so far today, I can click on the filters and I can choose reschedule successfully today. And this shows the patients. So at the end of the day, I might want to check that all of my non-attendance patients have been dealt with appropriately. So what I have for this, I can go up to the reports option. And I've got a DNA daily check report. I can run that for today by selecting a date range. And I can show the report to the screen. This shows me who I've non-attended today, whether there was a dose change or no last dose, the intervals, the last INR, was there any trending, what the percentage time in range is, are they new patients, were there any drugs, events or procedures, what the non-attendance count was, and what the DNA message was sent. And I can see my DNA letters 1, 2, 3, and I check this patient has got no message, and I would want to follow up on them as to why I didn't generate a message for them. In this video, I showed you how to manually reschedule patients who fail to keep their appointment. Another video will show you how to do the bulk rescheduling of patients. Thank you.